So IAC is a multi-pronged approach to providing services to tribes and tribal producers across the nation. Our commitment to stakeholders is to access the resources that support tribes and individual producers to steward their lands, honoring the tradition of land stewardship across the continent, and promoting robust economies through food and ag system development. I think I lost clickability again. So we have a nationwide network, which I'll get to in a minute, but I did invite my two colleagues here. We have Carrie Freeman and Katie Herzner, who are Alaska Technical Assistant Specialists, and I'm going to invite them to do short introductions before continuing on the overview.
Hello, my name is Carrie Freeman. I'm an enrolled member of the Village of Dot Lake, which is located in the interior of Alaska, but I currently reside in Palmer, Alaska. I'm excited about working with everybody. I'm primarily going to serve the southern part of the state. So come and talk to me afterwards. And I'm going to be on the meet panel tomorrow. So come and watch our presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen Marianne Herzner. Please call me Katie. I am a tribally enrolled member of the Nome Eskimo community, and I currently reside in Fairbanks. I will be serving mostly the northern part of the state. I know it's kind of hard to think of how you'd split up Alaska, but pretty much like interior up. That's me, my region. Let's see, my background was in high latitude range management. All right, so shout out to reindeer and tribal governance. So I'm excited to be here.
Just if this starts working. And so the Alaska region is also supported by the interregional manager, Natalie Solaris. She's based out of California. And so the way that we have structured our technical assistance is to have technical assistance specialists in the different regions. We originally modeled it off of the BIA regions, but have since expanded to include other focused areas where we have TAs dedicated to specific. And we've broken out those regions to increase our capacity and better serve the stakeholders that we're working with. So we have the interregional managers who support the technical assistance specialists in their technical assistance delivery, while also looking for opportunities for interregional collaboration and leveraging the resources that may exist on that kind of interregional level. So the interregion 1, which is what we categorize Alaska into, also includes Washington, California, Idaho, and Oregon. These are my fellow directors serving in Stakeholder Services Division at IAC. And I'll get into each of these programs, but I just wanted to put some face to the names. So we've really approached our service delivery in a holistic way, putting the producer at the center. So based on the input that we are receiving from the membership tribes and the producers that we're working with, we have designed these 5 different programs that work directly with producers to support them. So our Technical Assistance Network, which I'm the director of, and I want to pause and back up because I kind of had the nerves starting the conversation and didn't fully introduce myself. So my name is Tikon Galbraith, and I do serve as the director, but I'm also the vice chair for the Alaska Food Policy Council and have been involved with AFPC for the past 4 years. I chair the Indigenous Foods Committee and support the work with AFPC through chairing that committee. I am a tribal member of Mentasta Traditional Council, which is in the Otna region. I grew up between Fairbanks and Mentasta. My parents are Jeff Mann and Donna Galbraith, and on my mother's side, my grandparents are Don Galbraith and Molly Galbraith. So I just wanted to take the time to do that full introduction in alignment with how I've been taught. So with Technical Assistant Network, We are really generalists. We're the network weavers. So we have these incredible folks that are available on the ground to meet with producers, with you all in Alaska, to serve as the primary point of contact, to support the goals that you are aiming to achieve, and to help you overcome any challenges that you may be experiencing. We put a strong emphasis on hiring producers into this role. So those that are working in this space as TA providers are coming from a background of production, so they understand the challenges that may be experiences and can bring that expertise to the conversation. We emphasize travel and meeting you where we're at with the TA network. So there's a lot of travel involved in the position to join you in your operation, to meet you in the space that you're working or in the community. So whether that's the community or an individual operation, they can be there to join you. We're not prescriptive in our solutions. Instead, we really work to approach it through questions and helping to identify potential solutions that will meet your needs. So we're not coming in to say, you should be or need to do this way, but instead hearing your story and responding in a way that is going to really meet your needs. So to accomplish that, our TA specialists really, we partner strongly with the USDA to maintain a consistent awareness of the programming available through the agencies. And then we also participate in in many different working groups and collaborative efforts where there are resources being developed. Would you like to sit down? You want to sit up? Yeah. So this is a breakout of the different regions and how we have technical assistance specialists allocated throughout the nation. So we have the two, Katie and Carrie for Alaska. And then we have, one or two in each of those highlighted blue, or in the different colors there. This is a mapping of our technical assistance delivery. Just a quick summary, some facts that we have around the impact from 2024. We had an engagement with 3,792 engagements last year with 21 different that involved 21 different USDA agencies. Through the work and the technical assistance support that we offered, we saw application and pursuit of over $13 million. And we had, we had a connection with 934 different tribal producers affiliated to 351 different tribes. Through our youth programming, we engaged with 2,773 youth throughout the year. In Alaska, on that youth piece, we had a very successful youth summit last summer, where we brought in 36 youth from 16 different villages, and we were able to explore different agriculture opportunities, share about the different ways in which that careers exist within agriculture, really highlighting the diversity of opportunities. You don't just have to be a producer. It's about developing the skill sets and looking at agriculture as a sector that you can engage with. It's the topic area, but we really need, all types of specialties to support food production and a healthy food system in the U.S. So the Technical Assistant Network, just to emphasize again, I really see the work that we do as network weaving. So we bring a level of expertise from our own experience as producers, but we won't have all the answers. But we usually know somebody who does. So through our TA network, we have 23 different TA specialists and managers in the group. They all bring different expertise to the table through their own production and regional expertise. So we lean on each other quite a bit, but we also lean on the program expertise of the different programs available through IAC that I'll highlight, but as well as our broader network, through the USDA, through AFPC, like when we have a question that we don't know, we're transparent about that not knowing, but let us find out, let us connect with the person, let's find the person who does know. Earlier, another session that I was a part of, there's an emphasis on the market access program through the USDA. And so we also have a program serving tribal producers to do the same thing, where we work with the tribals to create market access readiness and engage with the international markets by providing the marketing support to producers and offering the opportunity to engage in the different trade missions, both domestically and internationally. IAC also has the Made and Produced by American Indian Producers trademark, which tribally owned businesses are able to apply for. And you have to be 51% owned to hold that label, but it really, it's a testament to the values and the quality of the product. And a fun fact about the Made and Produced is it's actually older than organically grown. We've had it, I think it's 97 that we got it established. And so it's been around and it's a known label that is really sought after in those international markets. We also have our natural resource department. These are the scientists, the soil nerds, those that like to geek out on the building of soil and the different practices that will really emphasize the outcome. So we work with local partners to be the host site of the youth in each of the regions. And so we'll place the youth with tribes or a tribal organization, and they'll come usually with an idea of what they're trying to do as a project. So they do like a mini capstone, and it's very flexible to really, and the intention is to really build that interest and that excitement around ag as a possibility for a career. And so they not only are working on a project that is specific and aligned with like their own interests, they're also going to be supporting a project of that host site. So the combination makes for a very full summer. But we have seen a lot of success through the youth programming, not only hiring many into IAC, but seeing them placed within agencies and with partners frequently. Did I go forward? Another big component of the youth program is our youth summit, or our annual youth conference. So each year we invite youth to participate in an essay contest, and if they're selected through that process, they're able to join us in Vegas for our annual conference, where we have a fully established youth track for them to gain, again, more exposure to all the opportunities within agriculture. Our regenerative economies program, there are finance specialists. We pull them into the conversation if we're working with a producer who is experiencing, really challenging circumstances, having difficulty balancing the books, experiencing poor customer service from the USDA, and like having difficulty accessing the program or the loan servicing. We help with business planning as well, and really getting the operation or preparing the operation for success financially. So as I said at the beginning, we're a membership organization. So we provide free technical assistance to all tribes and tribal producers. But we also have a membership component of it. At our annual conference, we have regional caucus meetings where the membership tribes with formal delegates identified are able to bring forward the issues or the focus areas that they would like to see IAC's emphasis on over the next year. So each of the region has the meeting, and the caucus issues are brought forward, and it's ratified as a full membership meeting at the end of the conference. And those become IAC's focus areas, kind of marching orders for the year, where we emphasize our deployment of resources and capacity as employees and as an organization. Membership on the council is vested with the tribes and not any specific individual. So I wanted to emphasize that. So it's the tribes are passing a resolution through their council to become a member of IAC, and they are identifying a delegate to represent their interests during that caucus issue. So through my work as the Director of National Technical Assistance, every day I see how important tribal agriculture is. I see how it's feeding our families, it's supporting our communities, it's growing the next generation of producers. And now more than ever, I would say, it's important to make this emphasis, to take these steps to secure our food future. To make these investments in a food system that will continue to feed us and provide for our communities for as long as it already has, as far as we can see, right? And so some interesting facts in preparing for this presentation that stood out to me, is that while tribal agriculture accounts for nearly 80,000 tribal producers, and it represents $6.5 billion, which is a $3 billion increase in just 5 years. The production would not be possible without access to federal and tribal programming offered to to support tribal agriculture economies. And in Alaska, in this conversation, when I translate the national work that we're doing to the reality in Alaska, a point that I'm frequently making is the importance of the census of agriculture. In Alaska, tribal producers, the 2022 agriculture census showed 96 American Indian and Alaska Native producers in Alaska. 96, right? That is not a true number. When I think the challenge that I see, that I know that it's been voiced in focus groups and in conversations, is that Native producers do not identify as a producer. The USDA language is challenging to connect with, not only for Alaska Native, but for Alaskans, because our production looks different. And so when they say, "Are you a producer?" we say no. But then we go out and we harvest from the land and we put up berries for the year. We're cultivating the community harvest areas to continue to make abundance available to our communities. We're managing the landscape to continue to have the wild resources available to us. Similarly, when we look at Alaska, right, let's expand what I'm stating about tribes can be said about Alaska. And so I looked up the number of producers for Alaska, and it says 2,045 producers statewide. It's 0.3% of Alaska's population is producers. So I'm emphasizing these numbers because the census of ag is how the funding is determined in the Farm Bill. So when we see the negotiations in DC of the allocation of funding coming to our state, we are underrepresented in these numbers. So I think about the native tribal allotments or the productions in our backyards or on the homesteads, and I say, like, we need to better understand how to register as farms through the FSA and be counted in these numbers to see the appropriate amount of dollars being deployed to Alaska to support the needs that we're all discussing here during this conference and beyond this conference. Alaska needs an investment in infrastructure, it needs an investment in transportation, it needs an investment in production. Across the board, we need dollars to meet the needs of our food system. And this is a meaningful way in which we can fill out a survey to really see the dollars support the work that we are all trying to accomplish. So what I'm starting to see, but would like to see more of, is Alaskan-made food and food products on the shelves and in the stores, right? Those of us here in this room are a minority, because we can probably all raise our hand and say that we have Alaskan-made products in our homes. But that the campaign for invest $5, for Alaska grown, there's only a small percent of the broader Alaskan community that is really making that investment. But the impact of it would be huge if we could get that message further. I see the opportunity for the expansion of specialty products like herbal vinegars, hot sauces, teas, ice creams, jams, commodities like salt and flour. When we have a healthy food system, if we take it beyond just the food economies, it's the soil health that is going to allow us to produce those products that will create that economy. So Alaska is in a unique spot where we're not rehabilitating broken infrastructure. We have the opportunity to invest in new infrastructure. We have models to build off of when we look at the circumpolar north, places like Sweden or Norway, where they have built out food systems and invested in infrastructure in a different way that Alaska has, where we can take those models and build new infrastructure where we are state of the art and we become a model for how to provide food security in the Arctic. So whether it's harvesting from the land, buying food produced in Alaska, or sharing a meal with family and friends, I've learned that when there is intention applied and it's connected to action, there's almost always a ripple effect. So I choose personally to intentionally engage with my food, to know where it comes from, and to share the gifts that I have been given from the land. In doing so, I hope to see a stronger, healthier economy in the state that is built around our values, cultures, identities that are ultimately almost always rooted in food. I get a little poetic here, but in the depths of winter, it's sometimes hard to focus on the summer to come. Right now, in spring and March, our brief but bountiful growing season in Alaska is in front of us. As we eat from our freezers and quickly see the growing space within them, paired with the returning light and the long days coming back to us, we start planning for how our freezers will be filled again. As we talk about our plans for the summer, we are reminded that a successful year of harvesting and growing looks different to every Alaskan. For some, it's a small herb garden in the window or a single potted tomato plant on the deck. For others, it's a backyard garden or a productive and successful summer of wild harvesting. And for producers, it's sold out CSA shares, it's contracts with restaurants, busy farmers markets, and a profit and loss summary that isn't in the red. Again and again, I see Alaskans, such as those in this room, all of us who are committed to the food system, invest both time and money into ensuring that the house is full of Alaskan local food. And I never cease to be inspired by that work. But I think it's tiring work. And it takes moments like this when we come together to really be rejuvenated and supported in this work, because when we're on our operations and doing it alone on our farms or in our backyard, it can feel like we're all alone. And so I'm just so grateful and inspired by this opportunity for us all to be together and to make these connections. I've been a part already of multiple conversations of wait, you're doing what? How big is your operation? That's amazing. How can I connect with you? Let me buy that from you. And so I'm just so grateful for the work of Alaska Food Policy Council, grateful for the work of every one of you. And I think we just need more of it. That statement that goes around a lot, 95% of our food is imported. To me, that says there's a ginormous market opportunity, a market capture opportunity at any level of the food system. Whether you're producing, aggregating, distributing, consuming, right? There is an ability to create economically feasible and successful food business in Alaska. And the support is here in this room because we don't have to be in competition. We can be in collaboration because there's such a big market opportunity in Alaska. So that is unique to the work that we're doing and not always the case. And so to be here, to do this, it's what I am excited for, it's what I'm passionate for, and I'm grateful for IAC putting such a strong emphasis, not only nationally, but on Alaska and providing support. So that's my spiel on the overview, I believe. had a video, but I talked too long or technical difficulties, so we'll skip that. So with IAC's offerings, the next presentation in this room is with my colleague and friend Lara, and she's going to get into the down and dirty of standard operating procedures and HACCP for meat processing. That is a challenge that we've really identified in Alaska, and I've heard from many of you that where there is protein production happening, the having it USDA certified is a huge barrier. So Lara brings a strong background coming from meat processing experience, working in different tribally owned facilities in the lower 48. Is going to talk through some of the do's and don'ts and the nitty gritty of it up next. And I also like to highlight, we also are putting on a meat production panel where we'll hear from multiple producers on a range of scale from backyard production to large productions to support community in the state. Part of the services and engagements and technical assistance that IAC is providing is through the Meat and Poultry Processing Technical Assistance Cooperator Network. And finally, we have a highlight of the Made and Produced by American Indian Producers on Saturday. And I think it's the last block of presentations on Saturday where we'll talk about some of the products. And we've brought some products as well from some of the producers to share during the mixer tonight. So yeah, that's what I got.
Okay, guys, so we're gonna roll right into it. We want to be cognizant of everyone's time, and I'm gonna try and keep this mic working. I kind of moonlight as an auctioneer sometimes, and like they teach you a little bit of mic work, so maybe that'll come in handy. My name is Sarah. If you haven't noticed, I'm not from here, and you obviously know that because I'm wearing cowboy boots, not like hiking boots or rubber boots. That's how you know I'm from Oklahoma. But I'm so happy to be here with you guys. My background is in meat processing. I'm a business development specialist with the IAC, with our American Indian Foods program. Before that, I worked at a couple of different meat processing plants. I worked for JBS, they're the largest protein packager in the world. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what I don't want to do. But it was really meaningful to see where so much of our food comes from. In the US, 80% of our food 80% of our protein comes from the same 4 companies. That feels problematic to me. Maybe it does to you. With that, I went to work for the Muskogee Creek Nation's Loop Square, and I oversaw their quality assurance and compliance. I started the week before our USDA inspector came, and we started under USDA inspection. So getting to see that process from the ground up was really impactful, and kind of just learning through the school of hard knocks, which is sometimes just how you have to learn. So we'll start, and please feel free to ask questions as they arise. I really believe that I tried to make each one of these slides. We could do a whole presentation on each one. And so if you see something that you're like, that pertains to me and that pertains to my operation, ask questions, interrupt me. I won't take it personally. I kind of have this split up into 2 halves, with the first half being general. And then if people have a lot of questions after that, then that's what we can dive into. If you have questions after the first slide, that's what we can dive into. Meat processing here in Alaska obviously looks really different than meat processing at home. I can think of 5 USDA facilities within like 4 hours of me, right? So that makes my frame of context is a little bit different. So I want to be really mindful of that. And if there's questions that you have, feel free to ask them. If we don't get through the whole presentation, that's okay. I'll give you my card and we can have a follow-up conversation. So with that being said, with USDA, you can send it across state lines. You could send it into Canada. That's a little bit more relevant. For Alaska, potentially, you can sell it to anyone. With going to Canada, you have like Canadians have different restrictions on labeling, and like that's a whole nother conversation. But if it's USDA inspected, it can go to Canada. If it's state inspected, unless it's a TA plant, which is a whole nother thing, but essentially it's state inspection that acts as federal inspection. We have some great state employees in the room. We've got the state veterinarian in the room. They can answer more of your questions on that. But as a whole, state inspection has to stay within state boundaries. You can't sell to anyone outside of state boundaries. And then custom can't be sold to anyone once processed. The owner of the live animal must pick up the meat. So technically how that works is you have to sell the meat before it's dead, right? So in Oklahoma, we do beeves and sometimes but mainly beeves. So you'll sell like live halves, right? And so technically, then the person, comes and picks it up, or producer brings it to the processor. That's custom exempt, right? You can't sell it as retail. It's marked as not for sale, but it's an avenue. It's there. And some plants will do all three of these. Quite frankly, if you're doing USDA and custom, I don't understand why you're doing state inspected too. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but to each their own. The pros and cons of each. Inspected meat can be sold to anyone, kind of like I said. Foreign countries might have separate labeling requirements, but that's going to be your one-stop shop to selling it to other countries. Custom processing has low regulatory barriers to entry. Anyone can do custom processing. I could do it in my garage. From a food safety standpoint, would I recommend doing it in my garage? Probably not. But, it's a lot colder here, so maybe it'd be a different story. If you keep it below 40, I think the argument becomes maybe a little bit stronger from a food safety standpoint, but you're not going to convince the USDA of that. So custom processing has lower regulatory barriers to entry, and it's also important to think about the community that you're serving. If you know that everyone who's going to want to utilize this processing facility they're just going to want you to process it for their own intentions, is inspection going to serve you well? I don't know. That's a question for you, but these are some things to think about. And then state inspection can be limited and typically not seen as a stepping stone to federal inspection. Some people think that it's a tiered system, but they're really not. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. And one of them, you're a little bit freer, but in some areas, there's more access to state inspection, and it's easier to get the state folks on the phone. And it can be easier to change things regulatorily at the state level versus at the federal level. But again, it's completely up to whatever you feel is best for your operation. But I always like to make the clarification that these aren't like a hierarchy or a stepping stone. They're each standalone and they serve their own purpose. So where to begin with USDA processing? First step is you want to determine if there is a need, right? Kind of like I said, if no one's going to buy it, what are we processing, right? If you're just going to put a ton of money and infrastructure and you're going to write the plans to get a USDA plant going, but you don't know where it's going to go, well, we kind of got to assess some other things. Make sure that you have a supply of product and a way to market the demand. Kind of like what I said, plants are really expensive. And if there's anyone in here who's in the middle of building a meat plant, they're not cheap. The equipment in them is not cheap. And if it's not cheap in the lower 48, I don't think it's any cheaper in Alaska. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I'm going to go out on a limb and make that assumption. And so, before you make that big investment, you say, do we have a supply? Yes, we have a supply of whatever animal. To be clear, the type of USDA inspection I'm talking about is going to cover poultry, but I'm not a poultry expert. But USDA does cover poultry, and then amenable and non-amenable species. Your amenable species are going to be beef, pork, lamb, and goat. Your non-amenable species are going to include things like reindeer, bison, elk, and a couple of other things. The USDA has a complete list of non-amenable species, and we can talk about that on the next bullet point. Amenable species means that if you go through all of the hoops to get USDA inspection, you have to pay for it. They like to market that as a free service, right? But it's kind of like driving a car is free. You just, have to buy the car and, buy the gas and do all the things. Same thing with USDA inspection. You've got to get your plant to the point where it can be inspected. And we can have a whole nother slideshow on that, right? What makes an inspected plant? And so that's what amenable species is. The caveat is if you go over 8 hours, you got to pay the overtime. Overtime at the USDA is not cheap. So I don't know that it all goes back to the inspectors. Overtime is not cheap over there. Non-amenable species, you have to pay for your inspection. They say amenable species, it's a right, but with non-amenable species, which is going to be reindeer, bison, elk, a couple of other things, that you have to pay for your own inspection. And so there's some costs incurred there. Those are good things to know though. If you want to do the district office, get on the phone with the USDA. I sound older than I am. I sound like a Gen Z person when I say get on the phone. No one my age does that. They're like, texting. Send an email to the USDA, find out what those numbers look like, right? Talk to other people who are doing it, because those numbers that you need to work into your calculations, right? If you're in the black before your inspector, right, but paying your inspector, and how often they're going to have to be there, they have to be there every day that you're on the harvest floor, the slaughter floor. They don't have to be every day that you're processing, but they have to have the option to be there when you're processing. They're real persnickety. And so, you need to be able to schedule that out, especially in Alaska where you're in more rural places. Your plant could be on a rotational system. And so you're going to say, okay, we this many days in advance, like, we're going to be processing this day. We're going to be on the slaughter floor this day. All of those things can, one, help your bottom line by you being more efficient, and you're not paying for inspection hours when your guys are sitting there twiddling their thumbs, right? Because the way I kind of think of it is if we're paying for inspection hours, we better be going, We can sit there and twiddle our thumbs when the inspector's not here. We're not paying him, right? But that's some expensive labor. And so those are just some things to think about with USDA processing. I would love to say it's not scary. Well, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And I think there's less than facilities, and that's slaughter facilities in Alaska. And so, if there's like somewhere that's packing meat pies, if you're dealing in meat and you're packaging it, to have your USDA stamp. And we call that a grant of inspection. Quite literally any other grant you think of. Oh, and talk to others, talk to other people who are doing this, who have experience in this, who have, a similar model as you do, right? Whether you are doing a mobile trailer, a solid facility, units that you're buying in that you're then going to assemble together. There's so many different ways to do this. But really, I think the thing is as we think of, food systems that aren't 80% controlled by the same 4 companies, it's easier if we don't learn so much through the School of Hard Knocks, right? At some point, that gets a little exhausting. And if your neighbor's already been through that school, you might as well ask them and hope they're nice. So who can interpret regulations and federal rules? The person in the mirror, right? And so when I was working in quality assurance and compliance, that was my job. It's all in the Code of Federal Regulations, and I'll break it down for you on the next few slides, but most of it is Section 9 of the Federal Code. Unfortunately, it's written by lawyers. Fortunately, plenty of non-lawyers read it. It's just maybe the most boring thing you've ever done. But it's doable. And that's the incredible part, is it is accessible. And it's not like USDA inspectors have a different guidebook than you do. They have the exact same rules that are published in the federal code, that are through comment in the Federal Register. If you want to talk about the commenting period, we can talk about the commenting period, but everyone's playing with the same guidebook here. You just have to read it, and it's long. Are there any questions at this juncture? No? Oh, yes. Fish or FDA? So the question is, where do fish fall? Fish or FDA? I don't know anything about fish. I'll be the first person to tell you that. However, if you have questions, I will work with you on getting them answered. and apply some of those same rules. I've got my own thoughts on the FDA, and just because it's a separate entity. The FDA, they are handy because they've really went to lengths to define what are good manufacturing practices. And so if you're looking at putting together GMPs for your facility, which I would recommend to anyone, if you're going to be working in the food safety realm, as a USDA facility, the FDA has put together a really good list that takes a lot of the guesswork out of you. And their list is pretty extensive.
The Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation permits seafood processors and regulates them. So we have our own Alaska program.
So glad we've got smart people in the room.
But I know they just passed the tribal voluntary bison inspection reimbursement program or something like that, where they're calling it. Is that any success in the state?
I don't know about the success that it's had. I can put you in contact with someone who's working and who's working through getting people reimbursed. So, and I'm blanking on her name right now because I'm running on 3 hours of sleep 2 days in a row. Yeah, the weather up here and that volcano, if that's what delayed the flight, it can have peace of my mind. But I will say that is a viable program. I think it's a great program, especially the fact that bison are considered non-amenable species is a little nutty. But it's a program. It works. They're getting people reimbursed. I think it's kind of a slow process, which I would assume is to be expected. And if you follow up after, we can put you in connection with who are doing that and kind of heading up that program. So if you guys want to answer these, feel free. If you just want to stew on them, also awesome. What do you plan on processing? Maybe that's in the near future. Maybe that's in your wildest hopes and dreams. I won't take offense. I think would do well in your market, right? And then what is your market? If we're in Kodiak like we are right now, is our market Kodiak? Are we looking to sell outside of Kodiak? My work with IAC, we work in market access, so expanding those markets, but everyone's goals are different. And I say that within the AIF program, want to be, in every Walmart in their state, that's my goal. If we have people who want to feed their community, all of their food stays there, but they've got, the best food sovereignty in that whole community. So I think that's important. Quantity, both the supply and the demand, those things have to match. If you've got a lot of supply, not a lot of demand, on that supply and demand curve, price goes down. If you've got a lot of demand and not a lot of supply, well, that's good because the price goes up. And then workforce, where's your workforce coming from? Where I was working, which was 30 minutes outside of the second largest city in Oklahoma, our workforce was a problem. And so think about, where are we getting employees from? Meat processing as a whole, you're cold and wet in the winter, you're hot and wet in the summer. And so that's just kind of the skinny of it. In Alaska, you might be cold and wet most of the year. And so those are just things to think about. What's your workforce? What's your quantity on both ends of that? And I know I've kind of talked about that a lot, but what do you think would do well in your market? I think that's something that I've seen as I've worked at IAC and we've seen more and more facilities. I think the ones who really, there's not such a steep learning curve and they really succeed right off the bat, is the people who put a lot of legwork in on the front end, thinking about where's this product going to go. I'm not saying it can't succeed if you don't think about where it's going to go before you open the doors, but it can be beneficial to already have that planned out, already having those conversations, knowing what's the difference between wholesale, retail, and how are you going to price accordingly. All that. And then what are the unique challenges of Alaska processing other than, weather, roads, expenses, kind of everything. But you guys have good people. That helps. We're going to skip this slide just for time's sake. Steps to get a USDA inspection. You follow that link. That is the apply for your grant of inspection. I wouldn't just do that on a casual Sunday. That's kind of a commitment, but you can do whatever you want, I guess. So that's your grant of inspection. That's going to be the first step. For non-amenable species per the CFR, you have to have an SSOP, a sanitation standard operating procedure. The IAC has one developed out that is a sample one that we can help you with to help tailor to your operation. Now, according to the USDA and the CFR, in order to get your grant of inspection, you have to also have a HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. However, you do not have to have a HACCP to do non-amenable species. So if you're kind of tracking this like I did when I first saw it, I was like, okay, so you have to have both to get your grant, but you have to have one to do that species. So if you're only going to do a non-amenable species, do you go through the thousands of dollars that it's going to take you to potentially hire someone to develop out a HACCP plan? Those are a lot of work. So according to some folks who are doing a non-amenable species plan who talked to their district office, no, you don't have to do. But you have to have an SSOP plan. At the district office at the USDA, the most recent guidance I got, you're going to do non-amenable species, you don't have to have a HACCP, you only have to have an SSOP. And the good news is an SSOP is a lot easier to do than a plan. I'm going to talk what all of this means, these citations that I have right here, and then I'll flip through the next two slides really quickly because I wanted you guys to be able to take pictures and take this home, which is why I cited all my sources when we got to the federal code. So this is the section of the CFR, and this is how you cite the CFR, and this stands for subsection 418. So this reads 9 CFR subsection 418, or section 9 of the Code of Federal Regulations, subsection 418. So you can just put 9 CFR 418 into your computer, and it'll pull up the regulations surrounding a recall plan. So if anyone that.
Okay, we have about a 25-minute break, and then we will meet back in here at 3:15 for a Lutic cultural orientation by the Lutic Museum, and then we'll get our party started for the evening, and we'll do hero, and we have lots more snacks coming too. So get a breath of fresh air and drink some water, and we'll see you back in a minute.